Okay,
There it is.
so welcome again, everyone, to our webinar where we'll be exploring the people pleasing and the fawn response. My name's Dana, and I'm here with my co-host Fiona, and
Hello.
we'll just jump right in. We're going to begin with the land honoring today. At Heartwood Healing Centre, we feel it's really important to acknowledge and honor the land in which we are located on as a center today, and many of us who work from home in different locations around Winnipeg. So we're located on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, which is the traditional name for the Ojibwe, the Anishinaabe, the traditional name for the Oji-Cree, Dene, the Michif-Pi, the traditional name for the Métis people, the Nahiawak, the traditional name for Cree people, the Oceti-Sakowin, which is the traditional name for the Dakota people. So we're on the traditional lands of all those people here today. And the water that flows through our taps at our center comes from Shoal Lake. We are honored and privileged to do our work here, and we are committed to working towards reconciliation and decolonizing in our work at Heartwood Healing Centre.
These are some of the things that you can expect today while you're here. So we've broken it down into content, activities, and then there'll be time at the end for questions and comments if you have them. And don't be shy. We encourage you to share and bring your experiences to this space because your voice absolutely matters. And today we'll be going over the definition of people pleasing, fawning, and trauma responses, and looking at the roots of that and how that can manifest in our lives. And we'll also talk about some strategies towards recovery from that. Yeah, let's get on with it. Let's talk about our webinar agreements.
So just some reminders that we want to make sure everyone's aware of for our webinar today. So as we were mentioning before we started, everyone who's participating today is anonymous. So your confidentiality and privacy is protected. We ask everyone here today to respect the confidentiality of anyone else, anything that's shared today, anything that's shared in the Q&A function, just to make sure that everyone feels safe in our space here today that we're creating together. We really encourage everyone to do anything that you need to take care of yourself throughout our session. If that's get water, stretch, take a break, whatever that looks like for you. We'll have time for questions and comments at the end, and we'll be also hoping to engage with everyone at a few points throughout our presentation. But as any questions come up, I would welcome you all to just pop them in the chat as they come up. Just a gentle reminder that we are not experts in this topic, so we really welcome everyone's participation, thoughts, and experiences to help us just enhance what we're talking about today and our exploration of this topic. And lastly, we invite you just to take whatever you find helpful from this presentation and leave anything that isn't helpful, as we acknowledge not everything's going to fit and work for everyone, and that is completely okay.
Thanks, Dana. And so, as we get into that, why don't we begin with a grounding exercise? And in light of how busy our morning was this morning, Dana, and I thought it would be a good idea to just go back to some basics and maybe some awareness of breath. So, if you wherever you're joining us from, whether you are standing or whether you're sitting, perhaps if you're sitting, maybe feel yourself sitting in your chair, or if you're on your bed, or wherever you are, just be aware of how your posture is. Are you sitting up straight? Are you sitting in a dignified kind of posture? Are you slouching? How is your body at the moment? Be aware of your head, maybe your neck and your back. Are they straight? And if it's possible, maybe put your hands on your lap, on your legs, and your feet flat on the floor. And then if you're in a position that's comfortable, maybe close or lower your eyes, whatever's comfortable for you. And alert and relaxed, just allow your body to become still and fully present to yourself in this moment. And as you take an inhale in, just be aware of your thoughts. Any thoughts of anticipation, thoughts about feelings, thoughts about the past, thoughts about tomorrow. Notice your emotions. Perhaps ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? Am I peaceful? Am I worried? Am I frustrated? Am I full of joy? How am I? And as you breathe in, just be aware of your breath coming in, and the freshness of it, and then letting go of any tension that might be in your shoulders, in your neck, in your arms. Pay attention to your body. Feel sort of a dropping in your body for a few moments and notice how that might feel. You don't have to fix or want to change anything in this moment, but just choose to respond by just being aware of it. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to leave. You don't have to engage with anybody. Just be aware of your breath coming in and going out. And rather than thinking about your breath, you just want to feel it. Feel the direct sensation of the breath as it comes into the body and leaves the body. You don't have any expectations of it. No need to change it, hold it, or control it. But if you notice that your mind's attempting to shape it or control it, even in the smallest way, just notice the tendency and allow the breath to flow freely. And with every inhalation, feel your abdomen and chest expand. And with every exhalation, the abdomen and chest contract. Just take a few more breaths in, a few more breaths out. Notice the full cycle of the breath. And when you're ready, wiggle your toes and come back to the space.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Fiona. That definitely helped me feel a little more calm than I was before, which is so welcome and so appreciated.
Awesome. Thanks.
I hope I'm not the only one who's feeling that way as well.
I was feeling a little bit like that too. I needed that as well. So
Good. So now we'll just move into some brief introductions so you can know a little bit about who we are today. So I'll start. My name's Dana. I'm one of the long-term therapists at Heartwood Healing Centre. I've been here for approaching a year and a half. And it's been such a great experience for me working here. I really feel really connected and passionate about this agency and the work that we do here. And I want to share that I have a very personal connection to this topic. I consider myself a recovering people pleaser, and this is something that I've done a lot of reflection and learning to understand how this impacts my life. And that has been really powerful and profound and helpful for me. And I really see it as an ongoing process. I wouldn't consider myself no longer a people pleaser in any way. It's still part of my life and how I'm navigating the world. So I think it's a really important topic to explore, and I'm excited to share about this with everyone and connect with other people who have some personal experience with this as well.
thanks, Dana. I wish I'd gone before you because I think that should have gone. Like that was a really good segue to what we're doing. I think that was a really great introduction. Thank you. I'm Fiona. Um, uh, I've been with Heartwood for the last year as a peer mentor, and I've recently transitioned into my role here as a part-time, short-term counselor. And I'm thrilled to be here. Like Dana, I am also a recovering people pleaser. And so for me too, this very much feels like this is going to be an ongoing thing for me as well. So I hopefully there's things today that resonate for you as well. So whether that's in your own life or in maybe the life of your clients or elsewhere, or even people that you know and love. So I like the idea that we're building awareness here today And so I think that anytime that we can build that awareness, um, you know, things are improving. So let's talk about what people pleasing might be.
Thanks so much.
So towards the end, before we actually jump into this topic, why don't in our Q&A box, which is not a chat box, now that I've got that right, why don't we just take a few minutes to share in the space that you can what people pleasing might mean to each of you. Whether that's a belief or an assumption, anything that we might hold about this idea of what it might be. So just go ahead and, type that into the space that we have, and we'll see what comes up. If you could just take a few minutes to do that, that would be great. There's no right or wrong answer here either.
Yeah, it's really just a chance for us to begin to share some of the thoughts and views and beliefs we have about this, get our discussion going.
Mm-hmm.
We already have our first
We,
couple contributions. Thank you so much. Oh, I see someone put a question. Is this an audio only lecture for participants? So there you should be able to see a PowerPoint screen and video images of Fiona and I. So if you're having trouble, if you're only having audio, not video, maybe share that again so we can just know that. But this is our attendees today is some people who receive services from our agency, also some of our other therapists and service providers. So we have lots of people joining us today. So I'll read out some of the first comments people have shared. Someone shared a belief that our worth is tied to how accommodating we are to others. Another one, putting others' needs before your own. I am a good person. I am in quotes a good person by doing this. Keeping the peace. Putting others before yourself. Always trying to get people to like you. Someone shared, I just want to check, Fiona, can you see the Q&A box that I have open?
I can, yeah, I've got it here too. So and it's moving pretty fast because there's some good comments coming in here. Always trying to get people to like you like that. And
Is it, or I just wanted to check, like, because I'm sharing my screen, is the Q&A box also being shared on the screen?
I can't see.
Okay, that's good.
No.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't, that wasn't
No.
being shared because that would be breaching people's confidentiality. So that's good.
Yeah.
I'll keep going with the reading, putting others before yourself, always trying to get people to like you. To me, people pleasing is sacrificing yourself at other people's altar because it feels like I may be rejected or unaccepted if I don't appease others at my own expense. It is safe. It is a safer approach where you are with a person or situation that you do not feel safe in. Feeling responsible for people's feelings, denying what we actually want to prioritize what we think someone else wants.
Well, that's a good one.
Caring what others think more than us and avoiding conflict at all cost. Unable to say no, not knowing what my boundaries are and how to express them, not knowing myself truly. Having fear of being disliked. Minimizing one's own needs, emotions to establish a feeling of safety. Feeling fear or panic at the thought of someone being unhappy with me. Wow, thank you all for sharing those answers and thoughts. I think those really hit and touch on so many different elements of what people pleasing is and how it impacts us.
Somebody's added that it's what they've always done. They don't know another way. So yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this today.
Yeah, I think that's just the comment shared in the chat is really just highlighting that this is a real thing that people feel and experience. You're impacted by. So I'm glad everyone's here.
Me too.
Okay, so to continue that, we'll just share a little bit of a brief kind of definition or explanation of people pleasing. So I would share that all of those answers shared today to me represent people pleasing. And it's not just one thing, or it doesn't just look one way. It can encompass a lot of different things, and all of those are in the realm and part of this. But to try to briefly explain it, we could consider it an adaptive response that we may be using to keep ourselves physically or emotionally safe. And this can look like attending to the emotions or reactions or needs of others before ourselves. It can be a need to please others, and this is coming before our own wants, needs, and feelings. Something that's really important about people pleasing is that it can be a response to trauma. And that connects to the fawn response, which is something that we'll be talking about more in the next couple of slides.
Mhm. So first, we're going to talk about what the trauma response is, what this means, and so some of you might be familiar with this already. That you know, there are different trauma responses that you may already know about, such as the 4 Fs, well, 3 Fs anyway, the fight, flight, and freeze mechanism. More recently, fawn has been added to this list. And so this is why we're going to talk about this today. And so these are adaptive and survival mechanisms that essentially help us when we are in life-threatening situations. And so if you look at the diagram on the left there, there's some descriptions of what kind of emotions might surface when these kinds of things are going down. And literally, like the part of our brain that protects us, the lizard brain, just response. And so you could think of it sort of in terms of, if there's a tiger in the room, to use another analogy, right? What happens in these moments, right? And so, I mean, a lot of us are familiar with the fight mechanism. The tiger's in the room, gonna fight back, right? Tiger's in the room, fight, gonna run away, right? And so the feelings that surge up with that might be anxiety, panic, and avoidance, and things like that. And of course, freeze. We might become dissociative because the tiger's in the room, and we don't quite know what to do, and so there's suddenly we find ourselves with low energy, and there we are, paralyzed. But the fawn mechanism is another adaptive response where the tiger's in the room, and here's what we're doing. Nice tiger, nice tiger. Oh, hello, tiger. I want to be your friend, tiger, because that is the response that's going to keep us the safest in this moment. And so 100% it's adaptive. That's great, fantastic if there's actually a tiger in the room. But what happens when this surges up for us when there's no actual tiger in the room, right? And that's sort of where it starts affecting our relationships and things like that. And so let's talk some more about the fawn response. Dana?
Thank you, Fiona. Yeah, the tiger example is so poignant. So, fawn response. Um, so the fawn response is one of the now viewed as one of the 4 main trauma responses, but it's more recently been recognized. Like I don't know exactly when this took place, but I feel like it hasn't, just in the past few years, I started to hear about the fawn response and then began to learn more about it, whereas fight, flight, and freeze I heard about for many more years prior to that. So it's significant that this is only more recently being really recognized, researched, understood, and become more a part of our collective understanding of how we might respond to trauma. So what the fawn response looks like is it's a way of protecting ourselves through placation, appeasing, or people pleasing. So the fawn response recognizes that people-pleasing behavior is a response to trauma. This means that fawning is an automatic reaction that we may have to danger. This is really meaningful and important for people who are impacted by people-pleasing and fawning behavior, because it's really common to feel a lot of guilt or shame or personal responsibility for fawning. feeling like this is something wrong with us for acting this way. There's something wrong with our ability to cope, when in reality, we can understand it in the same way we would the other trauma responses, in that they are automatic survival responses and they're happening automatically outside of our control. So this can really help us feel some relief and distance from some of those emotions of guilt and shame, which can be really, really harmful and hard on ourselves. So that's why I titled this slide, "The fawn response being really justice for people pleasers." I think it really helps us look at this behavior and this response in a different light, in a different way. So is this one me too, Fiona?
It is. It is.
Okay.
It is.
Wonderful. So want to talk a little bit more about some of the roots of people pleasing and fawning. So we've explained a little bit about what it is, but where does this come from? How does this develop and become a part of our trauma responses that we're holding? So a little more about fawning. It's a way to stay safe and survive in unpredictable, unsafe, and invalidating environments. And so in these environments, to survive, we're learning to be acutely responsive to what others expect us to do and say. We're learning to anticipate the emotions and reactions of others. And this is usually occurring in relationship with, when, maybe we were children or vulnerable people, with adults who we depended on for survival. That's really key here, that we maybe didn't have a choice but to respond in this type of way to keep us safe with people we relied on to meet our needs. This can also be a response that we have to meet other needs, not just safety, but the needs that we have for acceptance, love, care, validation, which are really valid and important needs that we have. So what's important also is that, this people-pleasing response that was needed in one environment to keep us safe, once we're learning that this is effective, it can transfer and expand to a response that we use in a variety of environments and relationships. And this is where we really see it manifesting in a lot of different ways in how we're going through the world, engaging in relationships. And it's becoming an automatic response that we have. So we'll talk a little more about that and how it kind of manifests in other ways.
So once we realize that this is going on, and we become more aware of it, what's helpful is to start reframing this for ourselves. What helped me immeasurably, and I think, as human beings, helps maybe most of us, is to realize not just what we're doing, but why we're doing it. And so if now that we can understand why we're doing it, is to realize that, actually, we're not weak and we're not ridiculous when we're people pleasing and when we're actually, engaging in fawning behavior. But actually what's going on is we're being sort of triggered in some way, and that, what's going on is we're being adaptive, and our brain, our beautiful, amazing brains, are being resourceful and actually protecting us and stepping in. And so looking at ourselves with some compassion, and actually having tremendous gratitude, or at least a little bit of gratitude, if we can't go to tremendous right away, um, can go a long way in even building that compassion for ourselves. Oh, instead of being hypercritical, why do I do this? Why do I always go there? Why do I always let this? Why do I always put my needs last? And things like that, and these messages that we might be giving ourselves. Instead, how about, hey, well done, you. That didn't feel safe. You got yourself out of that one. you know um maybe giving yourself a little bit of a pat on the shoulder, or on the back, for keeping yourself actually safe, because it doesn't actually matter to our brains, especially if we are coming from a place of extreme stress and or trauma, about whether the threat is real or not. It just has to be perceived. That's all. Right? For our brains, our amazing brains, to jump in and want to protect us. And so rather than being hyper and self-critical, how about we start looking at ourselves as being, adaptive intelligent human beings that can actually read people and read situations. You know, people might call us sensitive, but actually what we are is people reading, situation reading, and as such, you know, have the ability to keep ourselves safe. And that makes us remarkable. And that means that we actually are quite resilient.
Mm.
So I don't know. I just it's been helpful for me to reframe that way anyway.
I quite agree, Fiona. I think this was a really key and important slide, and just as you said, like shifting that narrative from there's something wrong with me, there's something, why am I like this, to just looking at those parts of us with love and appreciation for how they've kept us safe. And but we can also acknowledge, you know, there may be now times that this is no longer serving us, and we can shift that. But doing that with self-compassion instead of self-blame can be really, really impactful, how different that experience is for us.
100%.
So going a little more into what actually it might be looking like for us if we are impacted by this fawn response, how this might be playing out in our lives at this point, in our different relationships, in conflict and interaction. So it's a really helpful kind of visual graphic that explains some of the ways this could be manifesting for us. So it might look like lacking boundaries, having a hard time saying no, needing to please other people, feeling guilt, shame, or self anger, difficulty identifying your feelings even when you're alone, looking to others to tell you how you're feeling, being hugely concerned with social acceptance, codependency, feeling taken advantage of in relationships, feeling a lack of identity, putting aside your own beliefs for others and feeling scared to share your opinions. In conflict, you immediately try to appease the other person. A few others that I think are important that aren't on this list are, feeling disconnection from our authentic selves, disconnection from our needs, our desires, our wants, and the inability to be authentic in relationships, to be ourselves in relationships because of how this is impacting us. And I think these are really, really echoing so many that were already shared in the Q&A box earlier.
I would add to that too. Sorry, go back then. I would add to that too. You know, whenever we feel like we're getting taken advantage of in relationship, that sort of leads to bigger feelings like being resentful, you know, and
Yes.
then those kinds of things surface. And whether that's in relationships that are personal or whether it's at work or somewhere we're volunteering, because it can surface anywhere, you know. Um, anyway, let's go to the next slide because we're going to ask everybody.
I think
Um,
that's such a good point, Fiona.
you
Okay.
know, so and I see that Jenna said that the reframe was a helpful reframe, so love to hear that. Um, what a great way of phrasing that. Thank you. Um, um, anyway, in the discussion here, how has people pleasing taken on a shape of its own in your own life? If you wouldn't mind sharing there, and I'm sorry, I won't mention any more names. I shouldn't have done that. And yeah, just let us know how it might have taken shape in your own life. Because when we share stories, actually, or we share moments, um, uh, it makes it very real and tangible for all of us. And so it might take you a moment or two to type an answer like that. Have a few moments. So, it could affect you. It could affect somebody you know. It could affect, it could be personal. It could be work related. It could be volunteer related. It could be other.
Mhm.
So
Okay, someone shared, I stayed in an abusive relationship for 6 years when I truly should have left. Thank you for sharing that.
thank you.
Someone shared getting the wrong food order at a restaurant and saying, "Wow, thank you, this is great." inside not feeling happy with the wrong meal.
It's interesting how it can manifest like that in so many spaces, right? And how even in relationships with people that we have no actual relationship with long term,
Mm,
we enter into these agreements kind of, you
mhm,
know, in short term like this. And we feel like we need to people please in these moments too.
mhm. Someone
So
else.
that yeah.
Yeah, I think that's such a relatable one. And that's so true what you shared. Like it just sometimes it just happens without and it happens and then we're like, why? Why did I do this? This isn't even like someone I know. It doesn't even matter. But of course it matters. Someone else shared abusive relationship, could not leave. Someone else shared going above and beyond in family situations whenever there's tension, the same way my mom did. This um, how it impacts family dynamics, that really resonates with me personally. And we'll go into that a little more later as well. Someone else shared saying what I think people want to hear instead of speaking my truth. Another one is moving to a different spot in the library instead of asking people to please be quieter. One shared family of origin. Yes, that's very, very true and real. Someone shared offering to babysit my grandkids a lot to get approval from my daughter. Guilty for not being there for her when she was younger, making up for it now. Another one, staying in contact with my family of origin, even though it was harming me. Another shared not being authentic in my family, keeping secrets to protect their feelings. Another shared, for me, it shows up as fear of missing out on social events I don't even want to go to, allowing people to pressure and manipulate me into doing things I don't want to do, like favors, etc., shaping my life around my parents' ideals of what it should be, keeping the peace at home. So that was in like air quotes, keeping the peace. And another one, I was so afraid of being alone that I would let friends be mean or take advantage of me. And if I ever did stand up, I would end up apologizing to keep the peace.
Lots of peacekeeping.
Wow. Yeah, what I
Yeah.
think is such a prominent theme to connecting all of these is the labor that this takes. Like how much is going on for us internally when we're impacted by this. We're engaging in these different relationships, but there's all these other layers of how the fawning and people pleasing is kind of impacting how we're engaging, how we're responding, and then how that impacts us like during and after too, like the weight that this holds of what it feels like to not be able to be authentic or having to do things you didn't want to do. Yeah, wow, thank you all for sharing these.
There's another one that's just been added in here
A
too.
couple more.
Yeah.
Um, Someone shared people pleasing brings up lots of shame, and that's hard to deal with. Yeah. Someone else shared, I developed an eating disorder in order to fit into societal standards of beauty, so I would be accepted. Someone else shared, I can relate to what someone else shared about apologizing. I notice that I feel the need to apologize to people I'm close with after I do express a need or boundary, even when I do so respectfully. I relate to that one too.
Yeah, me too.
Mhm. I think this is really, I'm just feeling really moved by the experiences that everyone has shared and how people are able to relate to the experiences that others have shared. I think it's just so important to be talking about this and to know that you're not the only one who's impacted by this, and to maybe like hearing examples that others are recognizing can make you connect to other things that you relate to that you might not have initially recognized. And I think that's so important in our building our awareness and understanding of how this impacts us.
Mhm. I'm just going to acknowledge a comment here about the chat box. It has been disabled because we're seeing the questions and answers um, anonymously, so that people can attend anonymously. And,
Yeah,
yeah,
so you guys won't be able to read what anyone else is sharing, but that's why we're reading it out to
really,
you. Yeah, and thanks. Yeah, I think there's obviously some pros and cons to that, but it's to protect everyone's privacy. I
Mhm.
just want to really express my gratitude to everyone for sharing and being open and vulnerable and exploring this topic and speaking about your experience. It's so powerful and yeah, so powerful.
It really is. I would like to echo my gratitude as well. And what I saw there was it extends beyond family. It extends beyond, society. It goes out into larger spaces, even into, well, things like advertising and social media, which I'll mention just in the closing remarks for what we're doing today. But yeah, it's quite big, it's pervasive,
Yes.
it's
Mhm.
everywhere, it's everywhere. So, I think the sharing of all those stories really helps us see that.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. Okay, well, we'll carry on to now talking about a few other layers of people pleasing.
Mhm. And so, we mentioned that, uh, family is, and where we come from is, a large component of the people pleasing dynamic. But it's also important to understand that people pleasing can be a form of control. And so sometimes we people please in order clearly to influence how people feel about us. And while this isn't always a bad thing, sometimes it can reinforce an attachment style if we believe that people pleasing is is a primary way to keep sort of relationships or keep them going. And so, unfortunately, it is beyond the scope of this particular webinar for us to go into any depth about attachment itself. Um, but it is a topic that is definitely worth exploring. And so, in a previous webinar that was done in this series called Friends and Family, the different kinds of attachment are explored. And so, if you'd like to explore your own sense of and your own type of attachment, there is a link that is mentioned in that webinar, but is also mentioned here because there is a relationship between the two. Um, um, and what we're interested in here, though, is how attachment that occurs early in life and people pleasing manifests um, in a sort of reinforced kind of attachment that then affects our relationships. And that's really where we're going with this. And so relationships become actually as a result of this kind of challenging. And so that's really where we're going with this in this next slide. So relationships. We want them. We need them. And they can be amazing, but they can also be very messy. But, incredible because, of course, we want them. And so, how does people pleasing impact our relationships? Well, here are some of the ways. It can be difficult to be heard, genuinely to be heard, because it feels like we're giving space to everybody else. It can often feel like no one's genuinely checking in with us. We might be really good at genuinely checking in with others, but maybe people aren't very good at checking in with us. And so, what can then happen is people don't really know how to respond to us actually when we do share and when we do actually say things that we mean. And sometimes all we really want is some kind of validation or acknowledgement from someone. We're not looking for something very necessarily big. And that can lead to messages from the universe like, what's wrong with me? As opposed to, oh, will this happen to me? And so there's lots of factors at play here. It's not one thing. And you know, at the end of the day, because because we're so focused on making sure everybody else is okay, um, we aren't making sure that our own needs are being met. And so, um, yeah, it leads to complicated things like resentment, feeling unappreciated, I'll just share a tiny anecdote here. When I got married 20 something plus years ago, a couple that had been married for 40 plus years got up because we gave everybody an open microphone to come up and share their wisdom for staying together, and being in relationship of any kind. And they got up and they just said, always appreciate one another. And then they explained that it's really easy to be in love. It's really easy to be in like, not as easy as being in love, but it's really easy through the busyness of life to stop appreciating one another, because individuals don't always know what needs to be heard. And so it's important that we say what needs to be heard as well as hear it ourselves. And so when we aren't hearing what needs to be said, we start feeling unappreciated. And so these are some of the complications that can rise up. Dana, do you want to add anything to that? Oh, your microphone's off.
Thanks, Fiona. I think that's such a great list and points you've touched on so far. What's really coming up for me is just how our relationships are impacted when we can't be authentic and genuine in them. Or the people we're in relationship with don't have the opportunity to meet our needs or understand our needs or our expectations, because they don't know what they are, or what they think they are could be so disconnected from what they really are. And this is once we build awareness of this, also trying to unpack this, change these dynamics in our relationships is also really complex and complicated. So there's a lot to it. There's a lot to this, definitely, and it impacts us in a lot of different ways. But I think it's also a lot of hope here for what it can look like when we look at this. Yeah. So that leads us into our next slide, which is, what can I do? Okay, I know this could be impacting me, but don't just leave me with that. We want to know what we can do. So don't worry, we won't. So the first thing is just that I believe information is really powerful, like building our understanding and awareness of this, how it may impact us, reflecting and exploring more about what this looks like for us is really important, because if we don't realize this is going on, it's really difficult for us to change things. So just starting by acknowledging that and like praising and celebrating ourselves for that first step. Reflecting and building awareness of how this may be impacting us is another really important first step. Understanding how this plays out, how it looks in each of our lives will be different, and it will also look different in different relationships and settings. Something I sometimes tell myself when I'm thinking about this is like, if I'm not looking out for myself, who is? If I don't take care of my own needs, who will? And I think that's really important here. So what are some things that I can really do? What are some more tangible things that could be helpful in exploring this and how it's impacting me? So one thing that can be helpful is reflecting on your needs and your expectations, and then begin trying to set these needs and expectations and boundaries when needed to protect them. So this part of this is giving ourselves permission to have needs. We may not have really been able to do this in our relationships before, when everyone else's needs have become our priority and our needs have become second or completely disconnected. So figuring out to honor our needs, we need to start by just figuring out what they are and building our awareness and connection to them. And whenever we do start trying to set these needs and expectations, it's important to try using really clear and direct language. Something that's really common is, when you're starting to try to talk about this, still sort of some people pleasing is manifesting and kind of avoiding talking about it. So it could be, for example, let's say you don't want to do something with someone and you say, oh, I can't tonight, instead of saying, I don't want to tonight. Or saying, that doesn't work for me tonight, or I don't have the capacity for that tonight. So really try, instead of kind of avoiding taking ownership for our needs, we're being more upfront and direct about that. That can be really impactful in helping others understand what our needs are. Another thing we can do is try to notice and build awareness of the urge to apologize or explain. So no is a complete sentence. You don't necessarily have to have an explanation to say no. You don't have to have a reason for that someone could believe to exert your needs. Something that we can be really impacted by as people pleasers is the worrying about the feelings, reactions, emotions of others, but giving ourselves kind of liberation from that and knowing that we are not responsible for making everyone else comfortable. We're responsible for making ourselves comfortable. We are not responsible for preventing the reactions of others. We can't always prevent that from happening. Another thing that can be really helpful is attending to your own limits. Something that can be really common is, and that was shared in some of the examples already, like overextending ourselves, saying yes to too many things because we can't say no. So really reflecting on what you have capacity for, what you want to do, what is important to you, what are your priorities. And when your limits are being overextended, to take action to respond to that. This can look like asking for help, delegating, saying no. The next one is just to take a moment. It's really common that, and I think this was really coming up in the examples, like our first kind of instinct reaction is to like to fawn or to people please, to say, like, we say something, but it wasn't actually what we wanted. And that takes time to unpack that, to dismantle that. So something that can help us is to give ourselves a moment to really make sense of and tune into what we want, what our true response or reaction is. So if someone asks you a question, it's okay to say, I need a second to think about that, or I need a moment to think about that, or let me get back to you on that. It's also okay to maybe have that instinctual reaction, and then to check in with yourself after. Am I good with that? Does that feel right to me? Am I okay with that? And if not, it's okay to go back to that person and say, I took some time to think about that, and actually I have to change my answer. Number 5, what's really important is to celebrate these small steps and wins. As we were saying before, like, this can be a lifelong journey. This can be something that's in constant evolution. And the baby steps and the small steps are important. They help build up to the bigger steps. So it's important to celebrate and praise ourselves for every single thing we're doing, because we're dismantling a lot here, really. And that also really connecting to self-compassion. Remembering that this is a part of you that cares about you and wants to keep you safe. And that's what is at the heart of this behavior. So it's something we can have compassion and self-love for, even if we want to change some things about it. Anything to add to those, Fiona?
Can you go back actually 2 slides?
This one?
Yeah, so right here, number 2, right at the bottom, we're not responsible for preventing the reactions of others. It doesn't mean that, I think it's difficult when we're people pleasers because we're so concerned, of course, with other people's feelings, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't care about other people's feelings. That's not what we're saying here. It just means that we shouldn't be taking a back seat with our own all the time, right? And that giving yourself that permission is okay, because these things can coexist. They can live together, which can feel difficult or very new when we're so used to being so one-sided. But that doesn't mean that they can't. So I just wanted to add that. And so that's a great question. How do you balance caring about other people's feelings and your own? That's a great question. That's a great question. How do you balance that? Does anybody have thoughts about that? Because I have some. But does anybody want to chime in?
Yeah, I really appreciate what you just shared, Fiona. Thank you. I think, yeah, something that's important about this too is that an important layer in navigating this is some relationships that we have, it might feel safe to do some of these things in, and some relationships it might not feel safe to do some of these things in. And often for us, like, the fawning and people pleasing evolved in the context of relationships where it was not safe to communicate in these ways. So part of this learning is understanding and building our awareness of what safe relationships are like, what relationships it is safe to do this in, and which ones it isn't, and how we act in those different settings will be different, and that's okay, because keeping ourselves safe in different settings looks different, and that's okay. Um, so I think in a hopefully in a safe relationship, you don't have to choose between caring about someone else's emotions and honoring your own feelings. Hopefully there's space for both of that. So this can also, especially when you're starting to do this in relationships, it could look like being really open and upfront about it. Like, oh yeah, I'm really realizing I've been a people pleaser, or I've been fawning. I'm trying to kind of unpack that for myself and be more open and honest about this. And then within the relationships where you want to share what your needs and expectations are with someone and ask that they can receive that, that can be a two-way thing. So you can also ask them, what are your needs and expectations in our relationship? Are they being met? And hopefully that can be something that's an exchange, not just a one-sided thing, because one-sided in any whichever side can be harmful for us. But yeah, I really, as Fiona said, it'd be great to hear some others thoughts and suggestions on that.
Yeah,
Um,
there's some comments in the chat box here
yeah,
that are helpful, I think.
yeah. Do you want me to read them, Fiona, or would you like to read them?
Could you read
Okay,
them?
perfect, of course. Someone shared, boundaries are an act of love and show we value the relationship and want it to be sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Love
Someone
that.
else shared, yeah, I do too. Someone else shared, I have a complicated relationship with my dad, and my mom always wants me to talk to him so he doesn't complain to her, but I don't want to talk to him, and she's asking me to do it for her, and I care about her, and I want her to be okay, but I don't want to do that at the cost of my own peace. That's, I feel that's just spoken real, that really connects to how people pleasing, the like that in this internal wrestle of people pleasing there. Someone else shared, I think trying to be gentle and honoring all feelings. Someone else shared, I see that in older traditional roles as female partners and mothers, people pleasing is much more common in female roles compared to male roles. Well, I appreciate someone bringing that up because yeah, that's something we didn't really have time to touch on, but yeah, there's intersectionality in this issue. Like certain identities can be more impacted by this in the way our society has the way society kind of gender roles can be in society, and that's true. There's definitely ways that women are impacted differently than this, and girls. I agree with that. Someone else shared, I try to listen to what my gut is telling me regarding balance. Yeah, and that's really a key part of this. Like through fawning and people pleasing, we become so disconnected from our needs, our authentic self, our wants and desires. So a starting point is just building that awareness and connection, and that can provide us a lot of information.
So why don't we move to the fierce self-compassion slide? Because this might be a good time for that
Perfect.
segue, because we're talking about like these dualities, like these things that can come up at the same time, right? It doesn't have to be either or sometimes. And so toward building that self-compassion and trusting your instincts is, um, sort of leads into some of this. Um, Letting yourself be both, yes, tender and fierce at the same time. How do these coexist? Well, they do. This graphic is beautiful for is a great way to show us how this can manifest. Because you can have it is, isn't it? I like it that somebody's written this. This is an awesome visual. I know it was so good. We had to borrow it because it gives us this beautiful balance of both of our energies in this quest for wholeness, right? Where we've got this tender and sort of more loving sort of acceptance of ourselves, where we want to alleviate suffering. And then, of course, like, take action, I'm going to speak up or maybe use my voice or maybe just give you the hand. That can manifest in so many ways. Or I'm not going to reply to the messages that you're giving me. to alleviate your own suffering. And so towards that end, there's some inner healing, and then we also see some outer change. And so you can't have this tenderness and this fierceness at the same time. And they are converging and they're coming together towards the same end, which is amazing. And that is making sure that we're protected. So we're drawing some boundaries, we're saying no, but we're also providing ourselves with those much needed yeses to looking after ourselves and saying yes to ourselves and our own needs. And that we're learning to grow and change the way that we not just perceive ourselves, but we perceive the way the world is coming at us with its messages, right? And then how we respond to that. And in doing that, we can claim our authentic self. And I like it that it has down there these two cups, right, which lets us thrive, like sitting in these cups of like, a pink and a blue cup there. It claims both our tender and fierce sides, countering the gender role socialization we have all been steeped in. We get to question all of this, and we get to build our awareness and grow from there. So yeah, I think this is a fantastic visual for that.
I so agree. Thank you for exploring that, Fiona. Okay, now we would like to invite everyone to participate in an exercise about building some awareness of the fawn response that comes up for us or people pleasing. I apologize, this slide got a little wonky in the spacing, but that's okay. We still accept it the way it is. So what I'll be doing is inviting everyone to take some time to go through kind of a guided exercise with me about exploring the connection to the fawn response. So building, as I was saying, a building block of this can be building our awareness of when people pleasing and the fawn response is coming up for us in these kind of automatic responses. So just for starters, I'll say that, this is just an invitation to participate. If you don't wish to participate in this, that's okay. You can just listen as well. And just to take care of yourself as you go through this. So I'll just be asking you guys to kind of think about a past kind of time where people pleasing might have come up for you. And then I'll be sharing some questions for you to reflect on kind of internally to yourself. And then we can explore a little bit about what comes up for us or what this exercise or practice was like for us. So I'll start by just inviting you to take a few kind of calming breaths, closing your eyes if you wish to connect to this kind of guided script. And if it feels safe to do so, call to mind a recent time where the fawn response or people pleasing came up for you. So many good examples were already coming up that were shared in the chat. And I'll ask you to choose one that you can explore and think about with enough containment that it won't be really dysregulating or disruptive for you. So if this is an example, like let's say if it's on a scale of 0 to 10 in intensity, this might be no more than like a 3 or 4. The first part of this script to share with yourself is just building this awareness. So saying to yourself when you call back to this time, just noticing and naming what's happening. So I'm noticing that I am people pleasing or fawning. I'm noticing this is happening for me. And asking yourself, what am I feeling in my body that lets me know I am people pleasing or fawning? What physical sensations? Next is, what am I noticing in my mind that lets me know I am fawning? What thoughts, what fears, what worries? What emotions am I feeling? Where am I feeling these emotions in my body? What do they feel like? I've noticed my fawn response or people pleasing. I need to name it and note what it feels like in my mind and body when it is activated. Noting allows me to build my awareness of how I experience the fawn response, so I can recognize it when it comes up again for me. I can normalize my response without judgment or shame. It is a response I learned to keep myself safe. It is a strength I developed to take care of myself. It is a strength that is no longer needed in safe relationships. It may be keeping me from connecting to my authentic self. How can I honor myself and my needs and challenge my fawn response? What do I need to say? Do I need to speak up for myself? Advocate for myself? Explain to others what I am working on? How can I bring myself back to a place of calm? Whenever you feel ready, you can return to the present moment. No rush, take as much time as you need. Well, thank you. Thank you all for opening yourselves up to participate and explore that with me. So that script is an example of a practice you can build for noticing the fawn response and understanding how it is impacting you, and then kind of working with that. So maybe noticing what response you had, and deciding if you want to take some action to sort of to change that, or to say something else, or speak up for yourself. In that script, we will share a copy of that in our kind of resource list that we'll send out after this webinar, if anyone's interested. I wonder if anyone would like to share any just reflections or comments on what it was like to participate in that exercise. I'm just give a few moments for that if anyone would like to share about that. How was that for you, Fiona?
That's good. I realized that I do have something going on around a situation. It's making my eye twitch.
Well, so helpful to understand, how our body is impacted by people pleasing, and that builds our awareness of like how our nervous system is impacted. Someone shared, okay, thanks. A few people shared some comments. Someone said, I'm definitely going to keep a copy of that exercise on hand. Yeah, great idea. You can even like screenshot it for your phone or something. That can be helpful to have it on hand easily. Someone shared, it takes a lot of courage and confidence to advocate for myself.
It
Yeah,
does.
that's really true. Yeah, and that's why it can be really good to start doing when we're first trying and exploring advocating for ourselves, to do it in a relationship where we feel safe, to do it first in kind of these environments that feel more safe and contained for us, before we're doing it in environments where we feel a bit less comfortable, or able to know what the response might be, and that helps build our confidence too. Yeah. Another reason why it's so important to, praise ourselves as we go through this. Thanks so much for those comments that were shared. Going to move on to the next slide and just share a few other tools that could be helpful. So the first one is the script that I just shared, which we'll share a copy with everyone, as I said. It can also be really helpful to develop some questions to ask yourself, maybe during or after you've kind of made a decision or had a response. And this can help build that attunement and connection to yourself, to your authentic self, with the decisions that you're making or the responses that you're having, and trying to separate, what is the people pleaser part of me and how they respond to this, and what is the authentic true self part of me, and how I really feel about this. So questions like this can help kind of do that kind of diagnosis. So some questions could be, for example, asking yourself, is this my priority? What is important to me? How will I feel after I make this decision? Do I feel seen and heard? One I like to ask myself if I'm thinking about a decision and I don't know what I want to do, like I'm feeling this internal wrestle a bit with kind of maybe what I feel I should do, what I really want to do. I try to ask myself, like, try to picture the two or the different kind of options and try to connect it. How does it feel in my body if I do this? How does it feel in my body if I don't do this? And sometimes one of them might be giving me a bit more of a stress kind of response that I can pick up in my body and my nervous system. So yeah, these could be some great kind of guiding questions, but also you might each have specific questions that would feel more kind of appropriate or relevant to you. So it can be a great exploration to develop what questions would really fit for you. Another thing that can be a helpful tool is finding some way to celebrate and honor anytime we are disrupting these patterns. So you could try like writing down a list anytime you exert your boundary or say no. And then at the end of the year or the month or the week or the day, you can look at your list and celebrate that. I shared an image of this punch card that I sometimes have made these for my clients or friends to share as a tool you can use to celebrate anytime you set a boundary. And then it could be, let's say, after you say no 5 times, you can treat yourself to a little treat or something, or just give yourself a reason and excuse to celebrate. But it doesn't have to be 5 times. It could be 1 time. It could be any amount of times. The purpose of this is just really giving ourselves something to celebrate, a way to praise ourselves for what we're doing, because this is difficult. This is difficult work to do. So that building, it's important to encourage ourselves as we go along the way. Yeah.
So just the last part of what we're doing today. When you're a people pleaser, it's hard to know that you are enough, actually. And Emma Reed Turrell, who's the author of a fabulous book called Pleasing You, or Pleasing Yourself. Is it Pleasing You or Pleasing Yourself?
Please yourself.
Yeah, please yourself, right. Tells us that young children are born to please. It's something that's ingrained in us. They smile at their caregivers and they know that they are loved, and this is where it begins for us. And for us, it becomes a matter of survival. And so she also tells us that people pleasing comes in many, many forms and in many disguises. And so she advises that the lack of power and fear of rejection, as well as things like social networks, which came up in the Q&A box, and social media have put people in front of things like infinite algorithms, and we're bombarded with advertisements and things like this that tell us that we should be people pleasing around us all the time, and we are not enough. And so if you've got that on top of your very own lived experiences, or you've come out of a background or experiences where you may have trauma and things like that, it starts piling up. And so we might be walking around thinking we're not young enough, slim enough, wealthy enough, busy enough, wrinkle free enough, good enough for this relationship, good enough for anything. So we get bombarded with messages both outside ourselves, but also from within ourselves. And so, we need to reframe everything clearly, in order to make sure that we are treating ourselves in the ways that we deserve. And part of that we talked about today was making sure that we are approaching ourselves with self-compassion. And that can be difficult, but one of the great ways to do that is to approach ourselves with some curiosity. And we've been curious today. You came today, you were here today, um, and you asked questions with us today, and we asked questions with you. And by doing so, we've grown our awareness. Um, and so by doing that together and alone in our spaces, but also as a community, um, we're building this awareness together. Um, but as you go about your day and as you go off into your worlds, know that consciously not pleasing, Terrell says this in her book too, is also a form of of people pleasing too. So consciously not pleasing can be as well. So we have choices that we can make. Um, and so we want to be aware of where we sit inside those choices. We don't have to buy into algorithms or values or belief systems, but we do want to be aware of the messages that we're holding within ourselves. So once we've got that, we can start rebuilding and reframing those messages that we're receiving, how we respond to those, and that can help us self-regulate and sit differently inside our relationships and those relationships inside the world. And we might actually find ourselves feeling like we've moved from never feeling like we're enough to knowing we are, in fact, absolutely enough. But in the meantime, if you're something or someone like me and you might need some daily affirmations of that, I wrote in Sharpie on my bedroom wall at the encouragement of my partner. Literally, it says in Sharpie marker on my wall right in front of me where I see it every morning, you are enough. Um, so I'd like to thank all of you for being enough and for being with us today and growing our awareness together. It's been fabulous. Thank you so, so much and sharing your stories.
Yeah, we made it to the end. Fiona, I think that was just so well said. Such an important point on that last slide. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you all for being here and participating. That the thoughts and comments that everyone shared are just invaluable in helping us know we're not alone, understanding that we're not the only ones experiencing this, and hearing from others is so validating and connecting. So yeah, now we have some time for questions and comments. If there's any, I see maybe already a few. Someone shared, this is truly the first time I ever recognized what a people pleaser I am. Wow, I'm really glad you're here. Thank you for sharing that. That's how I felt when I first read that book that Fiona was mentioning about people pleasing. Like it blew my mind, like rocked my world about how pervasive this was in my life. So as I said before, information is power. Someone else shared, thank you both, very informative. Thank you so much. Someone else shared, thank you both, such a gentle and kind way to approach a tough topic. Thank you. We really appreciate that. Another thank you and a heart. Thank you so much. That really means a lot to receive that feedback and know that this has been informative and helpful, because that was our hope and goal.
It was.
Yeah, and if there's any questions or comments people would like to share, we really welcome that as well. We'll give a bit more time. Someone else shared amazing webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Someone else shared, thank you so much. That was so great. Thank you. As a recovering people pleaser, I'm happy to have.
I know. I was just
I'm having mixed feelings.
Just like, yes. I'm glad you were thinking it too.
It's important to have a sense of humor in this, right? And look at things from that perspective. Someone shared, this webinar had more options for group expression, which is a great new feature. It was a beautiful presentation. Thanks for sharing your personal stories. Yeah, thank you. I agree. It really enhanced this webinar to participate more as a group. And I think this is such a rich topic for group exploration as well. Someone shared, it makes it easier for me to celebrate small victories in people pleasing by pretending I am building my muscles of people pleasing. It's ongoing and it takes time, just like physical muscles. What an excellent analogy or comparison. I really appreciate that. Such a good example. Someone else shared, what a beautiful and empowering webinar. Thank you for your energies, information, and for normalizing this topic. Signed, a recovering people pleaser. Someone else with a great sense of humor. Well, thanks so much for those comments.
Yes.
So I just want to mention that some of the past, in case anyone isn't aware, some of the past webinars that we have offered are available on our website. I think it's Heartwood Healing Centre.ca or something to that effect. It shouldn't be too hard to track down. And eventually this one will also be available on the website if you wish to ever view it again. But we'll also be sharing a resource list out with everyone at a later date, which will have some of the tools that we shared, as well as some of the resources and information we use to develop the material for this webinar. So you can explore your learning a little more in this topic. So it looks like that's all the comments and questions for now. So I think that is a great place to end today. What do you think, Fiona?
I think that's a wrap.
Wonderful. Okay, so just thanks again so much for being here. We're so glad you're here, and yeah, so happy everyone could join us to explore this topic more. And good luck, people pleasers.